This chart summarizes different periods in the history of Hinduism. I'm not going to go into detail of these different eras. There is more information in your assigned readings, but just to provide some very brief highlights. The most ancient period is known as the Vedic period, because the religion was guided and governed by the Vedas, which are the oldest of the Hindu scriptures, and primarily involved priests performing rituals and sacrifices. Between 500 BCE, and BCE means the same as BC, it means before the Common Era, through 500 CE, and CE is equivalent to AD, so it's Common Era, it's after the birth of Christ, is known as the Epic, Puranic, and Classical Ages, and it was during this era that the great Hindu epics, such as the Bhagavad Gita, which we'll say more about, and the Ramayana were composed, along with Puranas. Between 500 and 1200, during this period, Bhakti Marga first developed, originally in South India, but then it spread to the entire subcontinent. Also, philosophically, this is when Vedanta philosophical ideas developed among Hindu scholars. Between 1200 and 1750, roughly, during this period, the Muslims began their incursions, a group called the Mughals, and they ruled over much of India up until 1757, when the last vestiges were effectively vanquished by the British, who incorporated India into their global empire. They ruled it until after World War II, when India gained its independence, in part through the efforts of the Mahatma Gandhi, whom we'll say more about. And in that year, India gained its independence and was recognized as a sovereign nation. Okay. And I'll say a bit more about some of those events later, but I'd like to move on now to describe the basic beliefs of Hinduism. So now I should mention that what I'll be discussing, at least initially, is a more philosophical version of Hindu beliefs, and the average believer on the street probably wouldn't speak in these terms. He or she would be more focused on and concerned with the worship of their deities. So this is more of a sort of a scholarly perspective on the meaning of Hinduism. But that said, so Hindus understand ultimate reality as something which they call the Brahman. And you can think of this as sort of an all-encompassing entity which includes the entire cosmos, all matter, and all human beings, and all sentient creatures. And so kind of the fundamental reality for Hindus is that everything is part of the Brahman, and everything is therefore divine. This is sort of a mystery that cannot be understood intellectually, but can only be grasped through spiritual practice. And for some Hindus, their main goal is through meditation to realize this basic truth, that all reality is unified, even though we feel like we're separate from each other and we're separate from objects in the universe. In fact, on a deeper level, we're all part of the same entity, the Brahman. So the Atman in Hinduism is understood as roughly equivalent to the soul. This is that part of the Brahman which is within individual sentient beings, both human beings and non-humans, and we'll say more about that in a bit. And it's our ignorance of the fact that the Atman, the soul, and the Brahman, this all-encompassing reality, are one, that keeps us trapped in the cycle of reincarnation. Hindus think in terms of cycles, both in terms of the entire universe. They think the universe undergoes cycles of creation, destruction, and recreation, and these occur on the scale of many, many millions of years. Currently, according to Hinduism, we're in the fourth of these series of cycles, called the Kali Yuga, which is, and from a Hindu perspective, the world gets worse and worse and worse as these cycles continue until finally we reach a point when the world is destroyed and then it's recreated. And so we're nearing the point, although it's still many hundreds of thousands of years away, when this cycle will end and everything will start anew. Similarly, Hindus believe that individual beings are trapped in a cycle of death and rebirth. And this is a cycle which is called